tutorial, I'm going to show you how I attach my binding, and there's several tips in the process that I use that I thought you might find helpful. So this is my Fray Boxes quilt pattern. If you're wondering about the fabric, it's called Flora and Fauna Midnight, and you can get that from Benartex. And I'm getting ready to put my binding on. So I want to show you the steps that I take that create a really easy process. It involves glue, it involves a specific presser foot, and I think you'll find it's really helpful, so give it a try. The first thing that you're going to want to do is I sew my binding down to the back. So this is the back of the quilt, and then I will wrap it around and stitch it down to the front. I do that with my machine because it's faster and I don't have a lot of time for hand quilting. So that is the method that I use. The first thing you'll want to do is whenever you've got your binding sewn on, I take some snips, and these are my Havel's Easy Snips, and they're curved. As you can see, the tip there on these are curved so you don't accidentally cut your fabric because they tilt up. So I go through and I'll snip just along any frayed or loose threads there to kind of get those out of the way. I snip those out of the way, and then you're going to take your iron and press flat the binding. This way you're able to get it really flat so that when you fold it over to the other side, you don't have any fabric that's bunched up or uneven. So once you press that down, then we're actually going to flip it over to the front. Now that it's flipped over to the front, I like to use Roxanne Glue Baste. I have tried different kinds of glue, and I have the best success with this because it dries pretty fast, especially when you set it with your iron. It washes out, so it's temporary, and I don't find that it gunks up my needle whenever I'm stitching my binding down. The other thing I use is I took the top off of this glue and I actually added this one. This is from Fine Line, and these are actually glue tips. And so you can glue them on, stick them on your glue bottle. And the great thing about them is it has a lid that unscrews. There's a pin in it, and that pin goes down inside the tip of your glue tip here to keep the glue from drying and clogging. So that is another tip for you with using tips on your glue bottle. So what I do is I actually just go ahead and I add little drops of glue. And that's the great thing about these tips is you don't waste glue that way. And I just put little dots all the way down. And then you'll just fold it over. See, you've got it nicely pressed so it's going to be even. And then I take my iron and I set the glue. So I'll fold it as I go and then set the glue with my iron. And it will dry immediately this way. And the benefit, I find several benefits to doing it this way, is that if I'm not ready to immediately stitch down my binding, the glue temporarily keeps all of the binding in place so that if I don't do it for a week or two or whatever it may be, that it's ready to go. Now you also can do this if you are the type that likes to stitch to the front and fold it to the back and hand stitch. You also can use this method of glue basting your binding because it keeps everything nice and flat for you whenever you glue baste it. So the next step I'm going to show you is how I machine stitch this down using a special presser foot on my Juki. So here is the last step for me of attaching binding. I use this special left compensating foot. It is made for my Juki. I have a TL series, and this will work on any of the Juki TL series. You can see here how one side is lower than the other on this foot, and actually there's springs in there and these move separately. And what happens is there's a groove. You can see right there that groove. Whenever you're stitching your binding down, the edge of your binding will go right inside that groove. And because this is up higher and this is down lower, it won't jump ship per se. It will just stay right along the edge of your binding, and it'll sew, your needle will come down there 1/8 of an inch all the way down. So you're gonna have a beautiful straight stitch all the way down on your binding. Now again, I sew my binding down to the back first, fold it over to the front. This is my Fray Boxes quilt pattern, if you're wondering about it. It's raw edge applique and piecing. And if you're familiar with the bullseye quilt, the traditional bullseye quilt, this is my spin on that. When this is washed, the edges fray, just like the traditional bullseye quilt. It's a lot of fun. So I'm adding my binding right now to that. So I'm going to put this on, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like as I stitch down for that perfect 1/8 stitch all the way down my binding. Okay, so I have my left compensating foot on. Remember, that groove is right here on the inside. I have my edge of my binding butted up to it. I'm using an orange colored thread that blends in well with my binding. And on the back, I have the same color thread. This is actually a silver color. And so what'll happen is there will just be a straight stitch. It actually, the way I do it like this, there won't be a stitch on the back of the binding. It'll be a nice straight stitch actually outside it. That's another reason I like to do it this way, because sometimes your stitch can go up and down and like this, and I just don't like it. So as long as you're okay with a straight stitch that goes all the way around the perimeter of the back of your quilt, then this works really great. And you can pick a different color bobbin thread if you want. I was going to use turquoise, but I just decided to go ahead and use the same color that I used to quilt this. But it's completely up to you if you want to do a different color bobbin thread to match your backing. I have also done that many times, and then it makes it almost invisible. You could also use invisible thread too if you'd like. So I'm using a 30 weight thread so that this looks a bit like big stitch binding. And so I'm just going to put down my needle, and I'll do a back stitch. And then you literally just guide. And I go at about this speed here. You'll just guide your quilts. I have my hand over here on this side. And just guide it through. I'll keep one hand here. Make sure it stays butted up there against that. And then you'll just stitch all the way down. And then you'll have a perfect stitch all the way around the edge of your quilt. Now you may be wondering, how does this work when I go and pivot around a corner? I get that question sometimes when I post some of my reels on Instagram. So I'm going to show you. There's no difference. Because this compensating foot, this side is up higher than this side, it still follows the edge of your binding. You're just going to pivot and turn like you normally would. So I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. You'll just come on down. And I do slow down a little bit. You'll pivot, turn your quilt, and then that edge is going to line up there again where your binding is. And so you'll just come down and stitch. So you just pivot around the corner there so you can see you're able to still go around that corner just fine. So here's what the stitch looks like on the front. There's that pretty 1/8 inch stitch all the way down. And then on the back, there is your straight stitch all along the back, the perimeter of your quilt. And so you can really barely see that. I've used the thread that matches here, but I could have used turquoise and it would have been even more kind of invisible per se. And that is my method for how I attach my binding. I hope you find it helpful. And give it a try, and if you really, really like it, reach out in the comments and let me know. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you don't already subscribe. And until next time, quilty friends, make lovely things.